Subscribe to my YouTube channel for deeply emotional, romantic, and mature stories that echo through your heart. Don't forget to like, share, and comment to support meaningful storytelling. The rain drummed against the kitchen window as Alina stared at the untouched dinner growing cold on the table. 3 plates, 3 chairs, but only one person waiting. Again, she glanced at the clock. 9:47 p.m. David had promised to be home by 7, and his best friend Marcus was supposed to join them for their monthly dinner. But here she sat, alone with her thoughts and the echo of empty promises. What Alina didn't know was that the conversation happening 20 minutes away would shatter the careful walls she'd built around her heart, and the words whispered in the darkness of David's office would change the course of 3 lives forever. The front door finally opened with a familiar creak, followed by the sound of 2 men's voices, one apologetic, one quietly concerned. Alina smoothed her dress and forced a smile, the same smile she'd perfected over the past 2 years of marriage. "Alina, sweetheart, I'm so sorry," David called out, his voice carrying that familiar tone of distracted affection. "The Peterson merger ran late, and Marcus was kind enough to wait for me." Marcus appeared in the doorway first, his dark eyes immediately finding hers with an expression she couldn't quite read. There was something different about the way he looked at her tonight, a gentleness mixed with what seemed like pain. He'd always been the quieter of the 2 men, David's college roommate, who'd remained a constant presence in their lives. While David commanded every room he entered with his boisterous energy and ambitious dreams, Marcus observed, listened, and somehow saw things others missed. "Alina," Marcus said softly, stepping forward with a small bouquet of white roses, "I brought these for you. I know how much you love your garden." The simple gesture hit her harder than it should have. When was the last time David had noticed what flowers she preferred? When had he last brought her anything that wasn't an afterthought purchased during a guilty moment? "They're beautiful, Marcus, thank you." Her fingers brushed his as she took the flowers, and she noticed how his touch lingered for just a moment longer than necessary. David breezed past them both, already loosening his tie and heading for the wine cabinet. "God, what a day! Marcus, you won't believe what happened with the Henderson account. Alina, darling, could you heat up dinner? I'm starving." As Alina moved through the familiar routine of reheating their meal, she caught Marcus watching her from the corner of her eye. There was something in his gaze that made her pulse quicken, not the casual appreciation of a friend, but something deeper, more careful, as if he was memorizing every detail of this ordinary moment. Dinner passed in its usual pattern. David dominated the conversation with stories from work, his phone buzzing constantly with messages he couldn't ignore. Marcus asked Alina about her painting, her volunteer work at the library, the small things that made up her days. He listened when she spoke, really listened, his attention never wavering to check the time or glance at his phone. "You should see Alina's latest piece," Marcus said to David during a rare pause in his work stories. "The one with the lighthouse, it's incredible." David looked up from his phone with a distracted smile. "Oh yes, very nice, sweetheart, very atmospheric." It was clear he hadn't actually looked at it in weeks. Alina felt her cheeks flush, embarrassed by her husband's dismissive praise and touched by Marcus's genuine enthusiasm. She'd spent months on that painting, pouring her loneliness and longing into every brushstroke. Marcus had been the only one to truly see it. After dinner, David disappeared into his home office for just a few minutes, to handle an urgent email minutes that Alina knew would stretch into hours. She and Marcus found themselves alone in the living room, the space suddenly feeling too intimate and too distant all at once. "Can I help you with the dishes?" Marcus asked, already collecting plates before she could protest. They worked side by side in comfortable silence, their movements synchronized from years of similar evenings. But tonight felt different. Every accidental touch as they reached for the same dish sent electricity through Alina's skin. Every shared glance held conversations they couldn't voice. Elena, Marcus said quietly as they finished drying the last glass. His voice carried a weight that made her look up sharply. "What is it?" He seemed to struggle with something, his hands gripping the dish towel tightly. "I should probably go. David will be tied up for hours with that merger, and He stopped, shaking his head. "I should go." But he didn't move. Instead, he stood there looking at her with an expression so raw, so full of unspoken longing, that Alina felt her breath catch in her throat. "Marcus, do you ever wonder," he said softly, "what your life might have been like if you'd made different choices?" The question hung between them like a bridge neither dared to cross. Alina set down the glass she'd been holding, her hands trembling slightly. Sometimes she whispered, and the admission felt like stepping off a cliff. They moved to the living room, settling on opposite ends of the couch with careful distance between them. The fire David had built earlier was dying down, casting dancing shadows across the walls. From his office came the muffled sound of David's voice on a conference call. "He doesn't deserve you," Marcus said suddenly, the words escaping before he could stop them. Alina's heart stuttered. "Marcus, you can't. I know I can't. God, Alina, I've been telling myself that for 3 years." His voice was rough with suppressed emotion. "Do you think I wanted to fall in love with my best friend's wife? Do you think I planned to lie awake every night thinking about a woman I can never have?" The confession hit Alina like a physical blow. She'd sensed something between them, felt the pull of attraction and deeper connection, but hearing it spoken aloud made it real in a way that terrified her. "You don't know what you're saying," she whispered, even as her heart soared and broke simultaneously. "I know exactly what I'm saying." Marcus leaned forward, his eyes intense in the firelight. "I know that you haven't been truly happy in months. I know that David takes you for granted, that he's so caught up in his own world he can't see the incredible woman sitting at his dinner table every night. I know that you deserve someone who sees you, really sees you, for the amazing person you are." Tears pricked Alina's eyes. "Please stop. I know that when you paint, you put all the love you have to give into those canvases because you have nowhere else to put it. I know that you volunteer at the library because you're desperate for connection, for someone to value what you have to offer. I know that you grow those flowers because you need something beautiful in your life that you can nurture and watch bloom." His words were like arrows finding their target, each one hitting a truth she tried to hide even from herself. How did he see her so clearly when her own husband barely seemed to notice she existed? "And I know," Marcus continued, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper, "that if things were different, if I'd met you first, if David weren't my closest friend, I would spend every day of my life making sure you knew how precious you are." Alina stood abruptly, pacing to the window where rain still streaked the glass. Her reflection looked back at her, a woman of 32, who felt ancient with loneliness, beautiful in a way that seemed wasted on empty rooms and distracted glances. "You can't say things like that," she said, her voice breaking. "It's not fair. None of this is fair." Marcus was behind her now, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from his body. "It's not fair that I fell in love with you. It's not fair that you're married to someone who doesn't appreciate what he has. It's not fair that we're both pretending this connection between us doesn't exist." Alina closed her eyes, fighting against the magnetic pull she felt toward the man standing behind her. "David is your best friend. He's my husband. We can't— I'm not asking you to do anything," Marcus said softly. "I'm just telling you the truth I've been carrying for 3 years, the truth that's eating me alive. You asked if I ever wonder about different choices. Every day, Alina, every single day I wonder what would have happened if I'd been brave enough to approach you first at Sarah's party, before David swept you off your feet with his charm and big plans." Alina turned to face him, tears streaming down her cheeks. The pain in his eyes mirrored her own, and for a moment the carefully maintained distance between them seemed to evaporate. "I remember that night," she whispered. "You were sitting in the corner, and I kept looking over at you. I thought you weren't interested. Not interested. Marcus let out a bitter laugh. I was terrified. David had already spotted you, and I knew. I knew that if I tried to compete with him, I'd lose. I always lose to David. Marcus. So I stepped back. I watched him dazzle you with his confidence and his dreams of success. I watched you fall for his promises of adventure and excitement, and I told myself it was for the best. That you deserved someone who could give you the world. The sound of David's office door opening made them both freeze. Alina quickly wiped her tears as David appeared in the doorway, still talking on his phone. He held up a finger, 1 more minute, and disappeared back into his office. The moment of interruption broke the spell, reminding them both of the reality of their situation. Marcus stepped back, running his hands through his hair. I should go, he said, his voice hollow. This was a mistake, was it? Alina asked, surprising herself with the boldness of the question. Marcus looked at her for a long moment, his eyes searching her face. Loving you, no, that was never a mistake. It's the most real thing I've ever felt, but this, he gestured between them. This conversation, these feelings we're admitting to each other, this is dangerous territory. Alina nodded, understanding flooding through her. They were standing at the edge of a precipice, and one more step would send them both tumbling into something that would destroy everything they'd built their lives around. Will you still come to dinner next month? She asked quietly. The question seemed to pain him. I don't know if I can keep pretending, Alina, sitting across from you, watching David barely acknowledge your presence, knowing how I feel about you. It's torture, please. She whispered, and the word carried more weight than any elaborate plea. I can't lose you too. The admission hung between them, the implication clear. She was already losing David, had perhaps lost him long ago to his ambitions and distractions. The thought of losing Marcus as well, of having no one who truly saw her, was unbearable. Marcus closed his eyes as if in pain. You're killing me, Alina. I know, I'm sorry. David's voice grew louder from his office, and they could hear him wrapping up his call. Marcus gathered his jacket quickly, but paused at the front door. Alina, he said, his hand on the doorknob, there's something else I need you to know. She looked at him expectantly, her heart still racing from their conversation. David's been having doubts about your marriage. He hasn't said it directly, but I can tell. He's been asking me if I think he settled down too young, if he's missing out on something by being married. The words hit Alina like a slap. She'd suspected David's growing distance meant something, but hearing it confirmed made her feel like the ground was shifting beneath her feet. He loves you, Marcus continued quickly, seeing her face go pale, but I don't think he's in love with you anymore, and I don't think you're in love with him either. Before Alina could respond, David emerged from his office, finally free from work for the evening. Marcus, you're not leaving already, are you? I thought we might have a drink and catch up properly. Marcus forced a smile. Sorry, buddy, early morning tomorrow, rain check. Of course, thanks for keeping Alina company while I dealt with that nightmare call. David clapped his friend on the shoulder, oblivious to the emotional storm that had just passed between them. As Marcus left, Alina caught his eye one last time. In that glance was a promise and a goodbye, hope and heartbreak all tangled together. David was already heading toward the bedroom, loosening his tie. God, what a night. The Peterson thing is going to close, though. Biggest deal of my career. He paused in the doorway. Coming to bed, sweetheart, Alina looked around the living room, at the dying fire, at the white roses Marcus had brought her, at the life she'd built that suddenly felt like a beautiful prison. In a minute, she said, I just want to clean up a bit more. David nodded and disappeared upstairs. Alina sank onto the couch, Marcus's words echoing in her mind. The truth he'd spoken hung in the air like smoke from the dying fire. You can't unsee it once it's revealed. She picked up one of the white roses, inhaling its delicate fragrance. Tomorrow, she would have to decide what to do with the knowledge that someone loved her completely, saw her truly, and wanted nothing more than to make her happy. She would have to figure out how to live with the growing certainty that her marriage was dying a slow, quiet death. But tonight, she would sit in the darkness and let herself feel the bittersweet pain of being truly seen and deeply loved by someone she could never have. Outside, the rain continued to fall, and Alina wondered if this was what it felt like when your life split into before and after. Not with a dramatic crash, but with whispered words in the dark that changed everything. The roses Marcus had brought her would bloom beautifully in her garden, she realized. They were the kind of flowers that grew stronger after surviving storms, their beauty more profound for having weathered difficulty. Perhaps, Alina thought as she held the delicate bloom, people were the same way. In the distance, she heard David's phone buzzing again with another urgent email. Some things she realized would never change, but others were just beginning to transform in ways she was only starting to understand. The fire finally died out completely, leaving Alina alone in the darkness with the scent of roses and the echo of words that would follow her into whatever came next. And somewhere across town, Marcus lay awake staring at the ceiling, wondering if he just made the best or worst decision of his life by finally telling Alina the truth that had been burning in his heart for 3 long years. The words spoken in the dark had indeed changed everything. Now all that remained was discovering what everything would become.